agriculture and rural development are vital to the economy in this Commonwealth. Unfortunately, today, many farm families are forced to depend upon off-farm income in order to sustain and enable them to continue in agriculture. And unfortunately, many of them have to move to more urban areas in order to find employment. We feel like that in rural communities there are lots of opportunities for businesses to locate or relocate or even expand their businesses. We've seen a lot of improvements that have taken place, such as water resources and sewer improvements, and also agriculture through funds of the Ag Development Fund have been able to provide agriculture the opportunity to expand and improve their operations as well. And we would like to see that continue, steps be taken to build upon that. And we hope that when economic development opportunities present themselves, that rural communities will be on the forefront of that with your administration. Farm Bureau policy states that we support rural economic development efforts to attract new agriculture, biotechnology, and processing plants and expand existing local industry, including production agriculture, which complements and adds value to Kentucky-produced agriculture commodities. This support should be through existing government bodies, community organizations, and institutions. We recommend adequate funding for marketing promotion of all Kentucky agriculture products. And I have two questions. As governor, what will you do to help attract employment opportunities to our rural communities? And how will your administration maintain existing agriculture markets and create new marketing opportunities for Kentucky agriculture commodities?
Mr. Conway, you're first.
Well, thank you for the question. I think the gist of the question is what's your plan for rural development? And we have a plan. I would encourage everyone to go to our website at conwayoverley.com. We have our Kentucky Jobs Plan that's there. Part of it is very much focused on rural Kentucky. We talk about existing strengths. We talk about building on the agricultural economy. We talk about investment in roads and bridges, which are so important in getting products to market. So those are big investments for rural Kentucky. And look, it's the job of any governor to go out and try to lure jobs to this state. And part of what we rely on is knowing the state very well and selling it and selling our workforce. And part of what we have to do, to be honest, is to offer economic development incentives. We have a theory of economic development in this state that we say to companies that ever come here that you weren't going to come here anyway, but if you come here, we will abate your payroll taxes or your sales taxes for a period of 10 years. That's something that I've seen work in Kentucky. I've seen it create jobs in Georgetown with Toyota. I've seen it expand the UPS plant. I've seen it create 10,000 jobs over the last few years. I believe in it. My opponent is on record as saying he doesn't believe in economic development incentives. That's going to be a big problem for any governor if you're going to try to lure jobs to rural Kentucky and you don't believe in economic development incentives. One of the things I'm touting and talking about a lot is that we have to create a public-private partnership, which the Beshear administration has done. You know, Governor Beshear comes from Western Kentucky. I think he gets this at his core. Here in Jefferson County, our broadband, high-speed internet access is pretty good. You get out in one of the other counties, the rural counties, it's tough to get high-speed internet access. It really is. And if I'm your governor next year and I'm trying to lure jobs to rural Kentucky, they're not coming if they can't connect to high-speed internet and have the connectivity to participate in the electronic commerce of the 21st century. Now, in order to get that done, we're going to have this public-private partnership. We're going to have our school boards, local governments, state governments, community and technical schools be captive customers and part of this public-private partnership. I'm committed to building that out for our rural communities and doing it the right way. My opponent, on the other hand, doesn't believe in public-private partnerships. This idea of building broadband out to Eastern Kentucky first is a priority of SOAR. It's just the type of governmental interest and investment that we need for our rural communities. Another point I want to make to you. I was around nearly 20 years ago when we reformed higher education. We created the community and technical college system to try to meet the needs of local employers. We've got a big skills gap in this state. I was with a guy in Henderson, Kentucky about a month ago who was looking in a tool and die shop looking for 50 more workers at $100,000 a year and couldn't find them. We've got community and technical schools in this state that need to realign themselves with the employers' needs of their communities. Too often we see employers going to the community and technical colleges asking them to train rather than the community and technical schools regularly assessing their geographic areas and making certain that local workers have the skills that they need.
Thank you. Mr. Bell.
First thing I would say to all of you, please take a look at my website and take a look at Jack's website and read for yourselves. Don't listen to what he says, I say, because frankly, it's not true. I have never said that I'm opposed to economic development zones, quite the opposite. What I have been very clear about is the idea of taking monies that come from your tax dollars and giving them to people from outside to come in and compete with you, sometimes doing the very same things that people in your community do, before we offer those same dollars to those that are in your communities already doing those things, to me is crazy. Why not, for those who've taken the time to put a seed in the ground, literally or figuratively, and allowed that to germinate and have nurtured that taproot in their business, who better to give a break to? It's their money. The idea that you give that money to somebody on the outside, that's where I have a question with it. Not the idea that deals should be given to people, and by deals I mean incentives to allow them to succeed. Your question, strikes home to me very, very personally. I'm a living example of somebody who moved away when I was 18 because there was no opportunity. I grew up in a beautiful area, very rural, very mountainous, very poor, but a place with a lot of pride and a great work ethic. And then what ends up happening is these communities, as the infrastructure fails, as the small farmers begin to be able to literally not make it, and they age and their children move away, what happens is they wrestle with, do we bring in the prison or the waste dump? This is literally decisions that are being made, some in your very communities, certainly in communities all over this country. This is something that I am determined as governor to ensure that we provide opportunities to rural communities. Because the values, the work ethic that comes, I've often said with no facetiousness whatsoever, that if I had to hire people blindly based on one criteria alone, if they grew up in a large family on a small farm, and that's the only thing I knew about them, I'd hire them in any industry because odds are they'll be successful. It is that work ethic that I'm personally committed to. And I will do everything in my power as governor to ensure that each of your respective communities has access to everything that we literally can offer and everything that we can afford by being the best stewards of the limited dollars that we have. You know firsthand that we are struggling as a state, we are struggling as a nation. We cannot borrow or print our way out of debt. We know that. So how then can we be smart with the limited dollars we have? With respect to how are we going to create jobs in these rural communities, you give people access and you keep government out of the way. I was asked, what could I as governor do? What could government in general do for some of these rural communities by a reporter recently? And what I told that individual is, listen, it's less a function, given how broke we are, of what we can do, and more a function of what we can stop doing to these rural communities. And we'll get to some of these issues as it relates to the water issues or what have you. I mean, we have over-regulated and suffocated our small farmers and business people. This will end when I'm governor.